Hello and welcome back to Mellohi, a DSMP podcast. This is episode 20 and today we'll be discussing Technobid's escape from Pandora's Vault. As always, we refer to the characters by name and specify when we're talking about the writers, and we try to focus more on analysis.
Alright, so we got lore.
So much lore. I'm so happy.
Lore. Like 3.5 lore streams of lore. I'm saying half because Foolishness was like
Foolishness is cool.
a good bit of it was lore, but it wasn't like all lore like the other ones were.
I mean, it was like some. It was interesting because you got Foolish, sort of just like, oh, so Dreams Escape. By the way, look at this cool pool table I made and the art painting I did, and why did you have to break the glass?
Yeah.
And it was great.
I kind of good to have that right after all the more intense lore.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so originally for this episode we were going to do like a trivia type thing.
But then
where we're going to like get questions about DMSP lore and see if we can remember them, stuff like that. But then lore happened, so we're going to discuss that instead.
So anyone else here just like was so starved for prison lore that this is just like a flood almost.
Yeah, I like speed ran all of the streams because I missed every single one. But I speed ran them like literally 3 hours before this, and I was just like, there's a lot that like was said.
There was so much to unpack.
Technos that I went back and watched the end of Quackity's, and then I watched Sam's.
Yeah. I had them both open at the same time, and I was just like, oh lol, this is fucking hilarious. Techno disappears, and then you have Techno on one side screaming, fail! And then you have Quackity yelling his head off, and the siren going off in the background, and Dream going, no, I have no idea what happened. I swear I didn't have anything to do with it. It was just chaos. The timing was perfect.
So we've definitely got like a progression in the main story now. All we have to do is wait for Techno to put together a plan to break Dream out of prison.
It's gonna be, and I don't know what they're planning to do for their like plan, but if they do keep going with all of the Greek like mythology stuff, I mean the way they broke out of the labyrinth was by flying through the top. So it's kind of like, this is kind of a tangent, but it's interesting that the security fall thing came up at the end of Sam's stream, where like, you know, Dream's like, I wanted to go to the courtyard, like I want to see the sun, and then Sam's like, got covered up, you can't. And
the whole thing of the scene that like obviously a bunch of people have been discussing is the fact that like it directly contradicts, well, maybe not directly, but it definitely contradicts things that have been shown before what Sam says. Because we know from the prison building streams and the time, specifically the stream where Sam shows Dream the progress on the prison, that the Dream was like talking about how people will be able to like wander around the prison. And he seemed all for it back then. So either A, he had like this very sudden shift,
or
this
Sam's
very
lying.
sudden change of mind. And like that stream happened like near or after the end of Exile.
Yeah, because they were talking
I don't remember the exact date, but it was like the prison was
almost.
A lot of the prison was built by that point.
Yeah.
What's weird is what I noticed. I rewatched like the part where they talk about the courtyard like 4 times because it didn't like. There's something that happens that doesn't make sense. Where it's literally Sam being like, it was like, it was my idea. Like he's basically taking credit for the idea, and then Dream just kind of is silent and like, kind of goes with it. But then there's like literally 2 minutes later, almost, Dream like then says, like he basically says it's his idea, and I'm like, wait, hold on. I was like, I was trying to figure out like what, like either Sam is supposed to be completely completely just going off on like tangents that he just believes are true, or like there's something going on. I don't know whether it was like they just accidentally messed that up.
I think Sam is lying to protect his worldview.
To me is that it's a case where Sam had ideas for the prison, and Dream said, "Isn't that like a security flaw or really inefficient?"
Yeah.
Like he said, Like, there's a hole in the top of the courtyard. Can you not, like, block that off? That's a huge security risk.
Or,
and
I
Sam
don't know,
took that as,
like, put a redstone door in it instead.
get rid of the courtyard entirely.
Yeah.
Or you said it's, like, kind of inefficient to have steaks, which are, like, a really good food for the prisoner, and maybe something
cheaper, like carrots.
that's a bit easier to farm.
Yeah. Because, like, if you
and
consider...
has less saturation. And then
steak...
Sam took it as, like, the least saturation food you can get.
Yeah, if you consider,
but
like,
it doesn't actively poison you.
Requires you have to maintain the cows, and you also have to have a wheat farm to feed the cows to get more cows. And if you don't have a 5-aspect sword, you need to, like, cook the steak afterwards, and it's a lot more difficult, like a lot more maintenance than a potato farm or beet farm or carrot
Dream
farm.
had a very sudden, very large, like, just completely reversed his opinions on the prison halfway through building it. Or Sam isn't being truthful.
Sam is twisting.
Or isn't being entirely truthful in what he's saying.
I think he's also just, like, he was, like, panicking. Like, it wasn't, like, panic, like, you know, Quackity, where he's like, open the fucking door, Sam! Like, these goddamn assholes. Like, I'm just quoting him, okay? But...
Sam is such an interesting character, and, like, I'm saying that as someone who's, like, been following his character since he started, like, playing a large role right at the start of start of season 2. In that he has this whole thing where he believes he's a good person, so what he does is, like, he's got this very black and white worldview where if he is a good person, everything he does is good. If he only does good things, he is a good person.
Yeah, it's very much like... Yeah.
And something I actually saw, like, I just saw this, like, an hour ago, is somebody putting forward, like, this idea, like, the main difference between Sam and Dream is that Sam sees morality about your actions.
I remember that.
Dream sees it as your intentions.
Yeah. Sam judges you like that. Sam judges you if you do bad things, you're a bad person. That's it. No conversation, no discussion. There's no nuance to it. And then Dream's like, well, if you did bad things, but it was for a good reason, then you're not a bad person, right?
Yeah. There was that, like, they had that whole discussion where he was like, you're the bad guy, Dream. And I'm gonna be real, like, my opinion is more like people are bad guys or good guys depending on the perspective, like, in universe of different characters. Like, Sam is a bad guy to Dream, but to, like, other people, he's a good guy. Like,
I mean, they are all morally great characters, so I don't think any of them really fit neatly into, like, good or evil.
They do, yeah.
But I disagree with the idea of, like, how people go, like, oh, it's a spectrum from, like, light grey to dark grey. I think it's a lot more complicated than that. Because you have a character like Dream who does really bad things, but ultimately he has a good goal. Or you have a character like Sam who is also doing really bad things, but is refusing to admit to himself that those are bad. Unlike Dream, who accepts them, those are both very different situations. So how do you judge where those two characters stand? Morally.
Yeah.
You can't put them on a scale as one is better than the other. Like a character like Quackity, where you can understand his motives, that he's like this character that's very driven by fear and paranoia. But also he's like doing terrible things and manipulating everyone around him.
Like,
Or even look at characters that are more typically seen as like the good guys. Like character Rambo, for instance.
Rambo.
He's a coward.
He is like, people always talk about, like, he is a pretty big hypocrite.
He is.
Hypocrite? How do you even say words? And the fact that he has this whole, like, side, people not sides things has, like, hurt people. Especially, like, an aftermath of Doomsday. Fundy, and how he dismissed Fundy because he saw him as trying to form a side with him.
Conversations. I've listened to it 17 times.
But you can understand that because he was having like a mental breakdown at that point. And that's what I like about the Dream SMP is that the characters, like, a lot of them, pretty much all of them have done like at least some terrible things, but you understand why they did it, and that's what makes them so interesting, especially to analyze, because you want to figure out why they did those things. Like character Wilbur. He's done some really crappy things as well, but you can understand him because he's got this whole thing where he sees power as the only way that people will like him, and that makes him such an interesting character.
He also has like a misunderstanding between, like, he has this weird thing where he tries to fit people into all of these labels, and if they don't exactly fit, he either just hates them or he's jealous of them. Like, that's why Ranboo, he's always like, Ranboo, ooh, like, you know, people just tell you that that person's bad, like, do you choose sides, like, that kind of thing. It's just funny, because, like, Ranboo is just, oh my god, Ranboo is such a good character only because he can't make decisions, like, and it's just landed him in so much trouble so many times. It's great, like...
He can make decisions when he's awake, but then when he falls asleep and just walks around with, like, no backbone at all.
Yeah, like...
Underwalking Ranboo definitely does seem to be the one with the backbone. And honestly, I'm really interested in, like, when Azure starts back up again, which hopefully will be soon with the whole Dream getting out of prison plot going. Because I just really want to see more of Underwalking Ranboo, because we've seen, like, a few glimpses of him, and he just seems like such a fun character. Especially because I am a big fan of those characters who are just able to, like, they're just, like, persuasive, they're able to talk the way out of trouble and into what they want. And also what's really interesting is the fact that Wilbur's character is actually quite similar to that. And it's interesting because I can see those two characters, I can see Ranboo and Wilbur coming into conflict in the future. And it'll be interesting to have characters who both seem to rely on words more than actions go against each other.
Yeah. Okay, but prison, Techno, friends, besties!
I like how he upgraded from, like, he was like, you're my friend, Dream, like, and then now he's like, you're my best friend is a necromancer. I was like, wow, those 3 months, you know? Like, it's just, he went from, like, nah, we're not friends,
those 3
Dream,
months.
like,
You
yeah,
really
we're
messed
friends,
up,
like,
Quackity.
so we're besties, like, we're best friends.
We spent 3 months in here bonding. He was just an acquaintance before.
I definitely don't think, like, Techno fully trusts Dream yet, but he definitely could soon in the future.
They're besties.
Because he knows that Dream hasn't betrayed him, unlike most of the people on the server.
I mean, you don't have to, like, fully trust someone to be best friends with them,
Yeah,
so...
100%. Yeah, you like, people always, like, they have this idea of friendship, and I'm like...
I mean, like, I'm pretty sure Techno doesn't fully trust Ranboo either. Like, he likes him, but I don't think he completely trusts him. I think he only trusts him a bit.
He's the weird neighborhood kid, but, you know, it's cool. I mean, everyone at one point was the weird neighborhood kid, so... Techno's like...
I think Bose is probably the only person he completely trusts.
Yeah. But oh my god, Techno called him sentimental! Dream memorized the fucking coordinates he was standing on when they were fucking meeting up with each other on the mountain. He buried his plans there! Oh my god!
The fact that the plans are there, okay, so, and obviously, yeah, people have been talking about this, it's a really big piece of evidence for the theory that Dream chose to be in the prison. That was his plan, that he set up the final confrontation in such a way that he would be defeated and presumably, like, bring the server together against him, but he wouldn't die.
It's either his plan all along, or it's like it's a backup plan where he just was like, that's
it's a backup plan where it's like, okay, if I succeed, that's great, but if I don't, here's my plan to stop everything going terribly.
Yeah, so it's like,
but
what the box sort of supports one of two things. Either he planned to be in the prison all along and planned for Techno to eventually get him out, or he had a strong belief that there was a very good chance he'd end up in the prison and he'd need Techno to get him out.
I think the interesting thing about that box is that even, like, any way you look at it, for how that box got and how those plans got there, it, like, brings stuff up. Like, if, I don't know, Dream just, like, put it there, why did he put it where he met Techno? Why would he put it in a place that had sentimental value only to him and Techno, which means he wanted Technoblade to find the blueprints. Which supports the plan that he knew that he was going to go to prison. He knew he had a favor from Technoblade, so he went, and that's what he had. Because when Technoblade asks him if he's going to use the favor to get him to abandon Tommy, way back before Doomsday. He says that he has something else in mind. So according to this theory, that's the something else he had in mind, that he would do the final disconfrontation and be locked in prison, and then he could later call in his favor to Techno and tell him where the blueprints are, and the favor could be Techno breaking him out.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean,
then there's the theory that the Dream didn't originally put those blueprints there, but he instead gave the blueprints to either Puns or Ender walking Ranbu, and they're the ones that put them there, which is a bit less looser because it was a place that only had
it only has value to Techno and Dream,
and also the fact that could he not just ask Ranbu, if it was Ranbu, to just leave
it
the
to Techno
blueprints there for Techno, instead of Techno having to go to the prison and get the coordinates from Dream.
Regardless, the guy memorized the exact spot he stood on of the coordinates, and he kept remembering those coordinates for his entire stay in prison. Dude, he is... what do you mean cut off attachments?
I think, and I've seen a few people kind of going oh, I thought he had memory problems, why can he remember it? It's because those are different types of memory. From what we've seen, the part of his memory that's being affected isn't the part that remembers facts. He has memorized the Revive book, he's memorized coordinates, he's memorized stuff about the prison. That's information he knows, but what he seems to be having trouble remembering is more
events,
and those are different parts of memory. So if one is being affected, that doesn't necessarily mean the other is being affected as well. And in fact, it's a thing very often with real life amnesia, that someone will forget stuff like people or events, but will still remember skills.
As someone who's
well.
had amnesia, it doesn't work how people think it works.
It even happens with stuff like Alzheimer's, where skills are more commonly retained than straight out memories, like the whole Tetris effect
and
thing.
It can be weird things too. You can forget your best friend's dog or something. Like an example, with Steve the Polar Bear, in the Extreme SMP. But you will know the exact day and time you went to some random place, but you've forgotten pretty much everything else. And it's just associations just form in different ways. So for Dream it would be in universe explanation, because meta-wise we know that he just knows the coordinates because they needed a way for Techno to get them. But in universe we could be okay, so he has forgotten certain things, especially things that he has no real associations to. Why would he remember Steve's name? It's just not something he'd be rehearsing in his head all the time. But coordinates, the book, different things like that, you would just constantly be rehearsing them because your life depends on it. So you wouldn't, even in the most extreme, not extreme cases, you'd forget most everything, but in cases of amnesia, partial amnesia, you wouldn't forget those sort of things, especially if it's amnesia caused by starving or torture or dissociation. There are things you retain almost as if they're just a part of you, and you just no matter how much people try, you will not forget them. So it's wild. But
that's actually really interesting to think about in relation to Ranbu.
Yeah, because Ranbu's got the whole...
Especially because he has specific phrases that he repeats a lot. And the lessons as well.
Yeah, he's got... breaking down Ranbu and then versus Enderbu is a situation, because you're you want to know so bad what the hell is going on there.
And I definitely think it's something that people miss a lot when analysing what's the deal with the Ranbu we usually see in lore and Enderwalking Ranbu, we've only seen that version of Ranbu a few times, is it's not as strict a line as people tend to depict it.
It's very blurry.
There's been times where the Ranbu that we usually see, I'm just going to call him regular Boo for convenience, he's the Ranbu that we regularly see, Regular Boo has had times where he has been influenced by what Ender Boo wants to do. Or he's remembered things that presumably Ender Boo experienced, not him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is lightly... I don't think it goes both ways, though. Because it's pretty lightly at this point that Ender Walking Rambu is the version of Rambu that has all his memories.
Mm-hmm.
And it could even be possible that, like with the Enderwalk ARG referring to Enderwalkers, that the Rambu that we usually see is actually his Enderwalking state, where he can't fully remember stuff.
That'd be interesting.
So it makes more sense for the Rambu that we usually see to have moments where he remembers part of stuff that he usually doesn't. So I don't think it would go both ways. Unless it's a situation where they each have like part of the memories and Ender Walking Rambu doesn't actually have all the memories. But it's been implied that that's not the case.
Yeah.
And also the experimentation
But
thing.
prison.
There's like the Z person, you know, there's all that stuff. But it all goes into that, so.
Yeah. I'm just... I have been fed, I have been watered. I can probably make it to MCC now. /J.
I just made a disconnection just immediately had. People, the whole thing where it's strong emotions that trigger, that in Rambu's mind at least, trigger the Enderwalk state. Think about it. Why would that be?
It's like startling him awake.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like how like when you're in a nightmare and you're just really a really intense part, or you're like about to die in a nightmare, and then you suddenly wake up.
Yeah.
He's essentially like shocking himself awake.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I equate it to like the difference is like being blackout drunk.
That's not a bad equivalent to make, because I'm sure it's like
You're a different person when you are under some sort of influence, right? But you're still you. You just have like parts of you are exaggerated or emphasized or dulled down. Like I know a friend who when they drink, they become much less anti-touch, and they become much more like softer, I guess, huggable. But normally they're not like that when they don't drink. So
I mean, we definitely can see like personality differences between how Rambu with and without his memories acts, because Enderwalking Rambu, which again I'm just going to call him that for convenience, for all we know the Rambu we usually see could be the Enderwalking one, but Enderwalking Rambu definitely seems to be a lot more confident. Whatever it is that's like that holds regular Boo back from being that confident isn't present in him, presumably because he has more memories. He has memories that I guess encourage him to be more confident.
Or he just knows like what happens, like maybe he like understands why it was important to like make the Shulker deal with Foolish and like to be more hardline in his stance.
He also seems to be a lot more persuasive. And that's tied into confidence, obviously, because being persuasive, confidence is a large part of that. But in terms of understanding what someone wants and being able to sort of like reconcile that with what you want, like he did while making the Shulker deal, he had something. He was able to convince Foolish that the deal they made was like all beneficial to Foolish, and in a way it was, because he was able to understand like what Foolish wanted and come up with a solution that meant that both of them benefit.
You need experience to do that. So.
And we haven't really seen anything like that from Rambu, and like you said, presumably it's from experience. And the Walking Rambu has memories, has experience that the Rambu we usually see doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So he's naturally better at that specific skill. And we haven't really seen that, because the Rambu we usually see seems a lot more prone to be persuaded by other people than to persuade them.
He takes a back seat in conversations.
Yeah, that one. the whole Snowchester cookie outpost thing versus Las Nevadas. He was just there. Like, I was like, come on, stop. Like, he was trying to like be on both sides.
He's very non-confrontational.
Like, oh but
He grew a backbone for like a
Yeah,
millisecond and
just-
then lost it
he's
halfway through the
gone. Now
conversation.
he's working at Wilburger or something.
And this just ties back into what I was saying earlier about how I feel it would be really interesting to see. I don't think, not them being like outright enemies, but sort of just trying to influence things against each other. If I'm making sense? Like, this is just because I really like stories like that, where it's sort of like, it's not a battle of like strategy or like physical strength or anything like that. It's instead about influence and I suppose like subtle manipulation and trying to create a situation that is good for you and bad for your opponent. That would be something that would be really interesting to see between Wilbur and Enderwalking Wombo.
Yeah, because it just anything to do. Basically, Wilbur and any character you'd want to see pitted against each other, but Enderwalking Rombo would be interesting.
He seems like one that could like fully go against Wilbur in his element, because Wilbur's thing from pretty much the start has been he relies on words over any form of weapons, not in like a pacifist way, but in that he knows he's not good at fighting, but he knows he's good at words, he knows he's good at persuading people of things. So he uses that as his weapon instead of like an actual physical weapon.
How did we get here?
And because most of the other characters prefer using actual physical weapons. Even characters that do use manipulation, like Dream, tend to use threats of physical violence and intimidation. Well, Wilbur's are like a lot more subtle.
Which makes me like wonder what the hell. Like, you got Quackity running back to Las Nevadas from the prison, believing that Dream is out, and then you have Sam who's going to lie and say that Dream is out. And so, how the hell is Wilbur gonna factor into that? Because if he hears that Dream's out, like, I don't even know what he's gonna do. Like, I can't even, like, he's probably gonna try to find him.
Stay away from my little meow meow Wilbur. Go away. Fuck off.
Like, that's what I'm thinking about now.
What if he finds out that Dream is still in the prison now? I mean, I don't know exactly how he could find that out.
What if he just makes the assumption?
But it'd be interesting if he did. Maybe he just wonders why Sam's still going into the prison and puts the pieces together.
I don't know, he's kind of dumb.
He's like very smart, and then sometimes I'm like, why did you do or say that, Wilbur? What are you doing? Like, it's like,
so like Wilbur and Dream are the smartest idiots on the server. Sam and Quackity are just idiots.
Oh my god, everything about the dynamic Sam and Quackity had that entire.
Sam's one of those characters that is like very smart in the technical sense, and that like he thought of everything with the prison and everything, but also he's just like an idiot and also like a coward in the sense that he is very, very
He's
afraid.
a coward in every sense.
But he doesn't admit to himself that he is afraid. And that's like what makes him fall into his belief that he has to be a good person. And that's what makes him go along with what Quackity says.
Well,
it's actually interesting to contrast with Quackity because he's not the same in that he does have the similar like motive of fear. But he knows that that's his motive and he just goes like extra hard on it because of that. On trying to... Like, the whole thing with Technoblade is essentially, his entire conflict with Technoblade starts with him trying to overcome his fear of Technoblade. Unlike Sam, Quackity knows that he's afraid and he's trying to overcome that. He's just not good at it.
He's an idiot. I'm sorry,
Because
but that
he's an
entire...
idiot,
He went in with a plan to, like, I'm gonna threaten Technoblade to force Dream to give me the revive book with death, and then Techno breaks down his plan instantly.
And I love
death. So that the necromancer tells you how to bring people back from the dead.
And it's like,
no logical
It's
flaws
like,
in
I
that plan at
love
all.
competent quackity, but
No
it's so
flaws.
hard to be like all I do all day is root for Sam, Quackity, and Dream together. I don't. I'm like a weird outlier, but dude, I just want competent Quackity to be real all the time, and then every time I tune into a stream, he's taking L's, and I'm like, what? Quackity, what the hell? I'm like, come on, man, I want you to be like ruthless and smart and like, you know, like.
Mm-hmm.
I wish he would, but he's
that
not
is, like,
smart.
an interesting
He's dumb.
concept of his character, and I think we talk about this in the last episode, or am I thinking of something else? But I do remember that we talked about in the crossover episode with We Live on Angst that's not coming out till October because we discussed Quackity in that episode. But his whole thing is he doesn't use logic, basically.
Yeah, he's just
Specifically when he's trying
so
to persuade people of something, he doesn't use logic at all. And apparently that does carry over to his like plans. He relies on
right? Like, he's like...
emotions. And actually it's interesting because you can actually apply that to the Butcher army as well, because he focuses very heavily on like propaganda.
Yep.
And psychological
he's very
warfare.
good at rallying people
and then sort of fail to consider some of like the actual like technical issues. Like the fact that like Techno was able to like kill them so easily when they came after him, and it was only by luck that he managed to get Carl and threaten him.
Yeah.
He's very much a character who does not rely on logic. He relies on emotions and using other people's emotions against that, whether to like intimidate them.
Yeah, it's like he comes up with a plan, but he does not think through what that plan would actually entail, what the details would be, how could it go wrong, like how could it fail, and then he just does it, and then it backfires on him spectacularly.
I think there's a really good example of it in the Allure stream when he goes up to Techno, and he has a whole bunch of weapons that he has, right? But he specifically goes to use a pick. And that's because he's thinking in like terms of emotional impact. He's thinking this will be satisfactory to me to attack Techno, to kill him with a pickaxe because he killed me with one. But he's not thinking in terms of like logically it makes sense to use like a sword or an axe because that will get the job done faster.
He doesn't just want to get him dead, he wants to also give him you know, like the same dentistry that like, you know, he was given by Techno. So
he doesn't just want the cake, he wants to eat it too.
But I just think that like that one little moment is just like a great way of showing how he thinks of things in terms of like emotion rather than logic.
He's a pathos guy.
Which again, like I just really like contrasting characters and talking about how they can be similar in one way but really different in another. Is the whole fact that both Dream and arguably Sam are both characters that are very logical.
I can see, I can see that.
Oh, which is why
And
Sam's like
specifically Dream is a very logical character who sort of like works out the best way to do something and then just does it because he's also a very ruthless
he's
character.
Also opportunistic as
and
hell.
He's super sentimental.
I mean, he sees an opportunity and he's like, okay, and he like takes it.
He's gonna take it,
even if it means people get hurt.
It's funny because he's like, he's logical, he's ruthless, he's opportunistic, he's fucking sentimental as all heck.
Oh yeah, it's also funny to me, like, people are like, oh, Dream can't carry everything. Like, are you really gonna trust him? Are you really gonna trust him saying that he's lost all care for everything on the server? Are you really gonna trust him on that?
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing about this character, and look, I just get so annoyed sometimes about how people interpret. I'm like, I know that a lot of people are newer to the fandom, that there's a bunch of content that they haven't watched, that a lot of the stuff about Dream's character can be really obscure. There's like a thread from someone who talked to him and now their Twitter account is private, so we've only got screenshots of it that has like one of the most important confirmations about his character, where he confirms that his character wasn't lying to puns about the whole big happy family thing, and that he does just want everyone to get along. And because it's so obscure, like over half the fandom probably just doesn't even know that thread exists.
Yeah.
So they just think he's evil.
Yeah.
And it's just so frustrating. You know what? It wouldn't be frustrating if people would just like listen when somebody said actually no, canon contradicts that, instead of just like insisting that canon is canon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm weird.
Like when the actual like guy writing the character said, "Oh yeah, my character wants everyone to get along, but goes to really extreme measures to do that because he sees the end as justifying the means," and then some random Twitter analysis goes, "Oh, actually no, he's just pure evil and just wants to control everyone."
It's so frustrating.
And then they're like, "I'm just gonna ignore everything that he said about his own character." You know, it's like that time on Tumblr where somebody said like, "Oh, the creators should read this person's analysis post to understand how to write their own characters better."
Lead the analysis, because that just means
like death of the author is a thing, but I didn't this come up on like the first or second episode of this podcast, but that's about like your own personal interpretation, like how you choose to interpret. Like let's say random example. Oh, not really random because it is kind of associated with dreams. Danny Phantom. People headcanon the main character as trans, and for a lot of people it's almost like a spite thing because the creator is transphobic, so you know that he would absolutely hate it.
I did not realize I don't know who the hell the creator of Danny Phantom is. I'm gonna be real.
He is the dude that keeps drawing like really bad versions of Dream SMP characters.
That makes sense. People always like I just blocked the guy, I think, when I first saw it. I was like, I don't want to see anything from this man if he actually is like, you know. I was like, no, thank you.
But yeah, like you shouldn't argue that when people are trying to like analyze a piece of media, you are entitled to have your own personal interpretation, but you shouldn't argue that interpretation is somehow more valid than other people who are considering more sources, like the actual canon and what the creators have confirmed about that canon and are taking that into account.
That's literally what canon
means.
Like
your personal interpretation is for fan fiction, okay?
And people mix up the fact that like fan fiction isn't canon. No matter how close to canon you get it, it's not canon. But that doesn't devalue it. It's just like you can't read a fan fiction.
It's your own take on canon, basically.
Be like, oh, this is a great like. This is exactly how they act in the Dream SMP. It's like, no, you have to separate those two realms, or else you're gonna end up in dangerous territory of fanonization. But I don't know. I live in the territory of like I genuinely don't mind when people call Dream a villain, only because I was in so many I used to make OCs and stories where people were called villains, and they genuinely believed that they weren't, or they just didn't care, and they would just do shit because they could, and like. So I kind of hear the word villain, and I'm like, like I'll see it in the threads of like people who are like, you know, the Tommy super fans, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. You know, I'm like, you're entitled to, you know, call him that. I don't really care.
Personally, I'm on the Dream as an anti-hero train.
I also
personally
like that
because he does fit like this is very like stereotypical like anti-hero trope of like the well-intentioned extremist, and I think he fits that trope really well. Even though it usually is more about like stuff like environmental causes and stuff, it's like the most common version of it usually.
But it's
like a very typical like anti-hero thing of having your ultimate goal be something that is good, but just going way too far and ending up hurting people because of that. To try and achieve that goal.
My problem with fan interpretations is that it's fine, you can have your own personal interpretation, you can call them whatever you want, but I absolutely hate misinformation. Yeah. So I hate it when they talk about.
Oh my god! All the things that are saying like, oh no,
and they call it canon.
Content creator Dream said that you can't sympathize with this character because he doesn't have a point of view. No, he said that it's harder to sympathize with his character because you don't see his point of view, and it's true. Although some people are just like get really done with that, and they're like, oh well, if a character doesn't have a point of view, it means you're not supposed to sympathize with them. Like, have you ever consumed any form of media other than the Dream SMP?
Have you ever
Usually there's
been
only
in,
one
like, have you
character
watched
that you get the
anime?
point
Have you
of
watched
view of.
cartoons?
That doesn't mean that they're the only character you're meant to
Yeah.
sympathize with.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
I was watching this stream and,
And
was
that's-
just the chat. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but so the chat was just like all people being like, oh my god, it's the people who like people were actually typing about how they were mad. People were like you know, putting like let my man go, or like, you know, oh my god, he like sounds so sad or whatever. Like people were mad about that. And I'm like, dude, chill. Like,
Dude,
it's
just
if you're actually that upset, like you actually need to remove yourself from the situation, because it's like
If you're like that, I guess,
yeah.
invested
and
in
it
it.
goes both ways.
that-
Like, if we are like actively getting super mad at people who are having their own takes, and if they want to like up and down just constantly be like, Dream is a child abuser, and that's all they know and all they say, like, you're allowed to say that. I mean, it's like, you know,
I do think that this is like one of the big things that Tumblr has, the Tumblr Dream SMP fandom has over the Twitter one, is that with Twitter it's all like quote retweets and fights and everything.
Tumblr,
With
you block
Tumblr,
and move on, or have giant essay conversations.
unless you do have these occasions, but there's almost like these like 50k, like somebody writes an essay and somebody
your
writes an
word
essay
count.
under that, and then you got an essay
Yeah.
under that. You know,
13K
that's
essay
what
about why
happens
you're
when you have an
wrong.
argument on Tumblr. But most of the time, somebody doesn't want to put in all that effort, so they just vague blog the person, and it's kind of funny sometimes if you haven't seen the post in question, because you just see a bunch of people going, "This post is real. This concept is really dumb." You're just like, I've seen like 5 people say that. There's gotta be some posts going around that's saying something really
like,
dumb.
Sometimes I'll see takes from both sides. I'll see like, you know, the hardcore like character Dream stands will make takes that I'm like, I personally don't agree with that, and that's fine. I'm not gonna go on. I'm not gonna. Why would I quote retweet them? That's just rude. Like, I just don't understand like that.
Why would you go onto their post?
Sometimes I think about
and
like how
sort of their
most
stuff.
of the Dream SMP fandom like doesn't know like the whole like mini Dream apologist fandom, and like how there's like all these like in jokes, like Dream eating rocks. Oh my god,
Crunch.
do they even know the prison dog is called Arlo
They
now?
probably don't.
The prison dog's called Arlo.
They
I'm probably
don't.
mad we named it. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, it's fun. Headcanons are fun. AUs are fun. Like, taking things and interpreting them differently is fun. It's how you deconstruct and reconstruct your world. If you're not doing that, like...
Oh my god, they don't know about the trauma. They don't know about the trauma versus the strategist interpretation.
See,
Oh my god,
missing
they
out.
don't.
And honestly, like, I just think that that's like a great example of how how this fandom should be, where people can have quite different opinions on the same character and still be like, yeah, you got some good points
like,
there.
I have my whole character
I disagree with
essay
that.
somewhere buried deep.
So like, for anyone who's listening to this who doesn't know the whole thing, so basically trauma interpretation is that basically what, like, the main reason character Dream did what he did was because of trauma. By the disc finale, he was basically just breaking down. He saw himself as a monster and
The
a villain.
The biggest point is that the disc finale isn't staged, and he fully believed that the vault would work.
Oh, okay.
And then the
Versus the
strategist thing
strategist.
goes and says, no, his actions might have been motivated by trauma, but he was very logical in what he did, aside from a few points where he might have lashed out. And he had very specific reasons for doing everything that he did, rather than just, like, the effects of trauma.
And the disc finale was
And it
staged.
goes along with the disc finale
Oh,
was staged too.
Yep.
That's interesting. I like that. I mean, yeah. Because, like, people, like, will be like, oh, they'll have the opposite, where they're like, there is no trauma. And I'm
A
like,
really
"Oh."
important distinction, actually, that I haven't mentioned is that a big thing in the strategist interpretation is Dream choosing to make himself seem more villainous, so
Yeah.
he seems like more of a threat. Well, in the trauma interpretation,
He's
he does
pushed
that
into
because
the
he
role.
sees
Yeah,
himself that
okay,
way.
I can see that, yeah.
He deliberately acts like a stereotypical villain because he sees himself as being that
Yeah.
when he's just like a regular guy.
Mm.
Well, in the strategist interpretation, it's a strategic choice to intimidate people
it
more.
probably is
Yeah.
a bit of both in reality. Like, it probably, yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know. Dream thinks himself as not a bad guy. He doesn't think he's that bad of a person. Even though he's done bad things, he thinks good people can do bad things. And okay, just I saw this post on Tumblr, and it just really helped solidify why that whole conversation between Sam and Dream felt so off to me. And it was like, so people call his silence as
They said it's
people say
admittance.
that his silence is
Yeah.
admittance to the it's admittance to the accusation Sam is throwing at him. But in reality, isn't it closer to like, you shut your mouth because you're in the face of an unsafe parent and they are yelling
like,
at you and nothing you can do is
What
going
is
to
he
change
meant
their
to
mind.
say? Like, oh yeah, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. I wanted Tommy
No matter
to
what
be
you
in
say, you're
here
damned
and
if you
be
do, you're
awful, or,
damned if
like,
you
Or
don't.
he's gonna
argue
repeat it. He's
against
just gonna
him.
say, well, I don't think I'm the bad guy. Like, what, like, he had nothing else to add to that. And, like, when I was watching it, it felt like that point where, like, Sam was going through the prison and he was just over and over asking the same questions to himself. And he gets there, he sees Dream is there. He's genuinely relieved. And then he backtracks and he realizes who he's in the presence of. And it felt like that thing where you're just like convinced you know everything about that person standing in front of you. So you break it down to them and you basically say like, you are the bad guy. I'm just doing this because like you were gonna do it to someone else. You have it good here. He was like going off, and it just felt like that whole thing of like, Sam is saying some truths, right? Like, I mean, like, you know, Dream did bad shit, and like, you know, in a lot of ways people do see him as a bad person because of that. But then you kind of like, not all of it's true, because we don't know and we can't know, and also Sam is making a shit ton of assumptions, and Dream's staying quiet, so we don't get any confirmation. Even if he agreed to it, we wouldn't know, because he's not in the position to be like, I am telling the truth, absolutely. He would just be like telling Sam whatever the hell he wants to hear to like get him to like do what he said. Like, you know, to be like, tell Quackity,
very
like,
big
that I am not here, and you know, like, just leave me some potatoes and leave me the hell alone, basically. Like, so I don't know.
Sam was getting mad at him for hoarding food because they've been starved. Sam was saying that Sam was victim blaming him.
There's something about that conversation. I've seen these two different interpretations of Dream asking Sam if he could go to the courtyard. And this fits with what I was saying earlier about strategist versus trauma interpretation, because the trauma interpretation of that, him asking that, is that Technoblade being in the prison and saying that he got baked potatoes for asking, basically reminded Dream that, yeah, he's a person.
Didn't a strategist,
he should be able to
dream
ask
person say that, though?
for some conditions to be better. And then the strategist interpretation of that moment is that he was reminding Sam of why Sam thinks he should be kept in the cell and not moved somewhere else, so that when Technoblade comes to rescue him, he'll still be in the same place.
There's gotta be something plot relevant.
And
I'll be perfectly honest.
Sam won't get as less likely to have the idea to move him somewhere else.
And we know the courtyard is important,
more secure.
Sam was like, oh, no lore spoilers or whatever. Like, so we know there's something there, and whether, like, I don't know. I'm living in the camp of like, Dream just genuinely wanted to see like a blade of grass because he hasn't, you know. Or that there is actually some backup plan somehow, like, that has to do with the courtyard. That would be kind of cool if he, like, I would genuinely be impressed. I'd be like, Jesus Christ, the writing in this one, woo, that is insane. They're pulling a real Prison Break here.
Considering they had the plans, didn't that, like, March?
Yeah.
They had the blueprints commissioned in March.
God. That's a long time.
God.
I don't know.
6 months ago.
Oh boy.
But yeah, it was just like, why the hell would you trust what Sam is saying about his abuse victim?
I made this comparison. It's like, it would be like if, like, near the end of Exile, Dream said to Tommy that he was the one who brought up the idea of exile instead of the walls, which, like, clearly is contradicted by canon. And obviously you're not going to trust Dream on it, because he's not exactly being friendly to Tommy at that time.
You'd be like, what the hell are you talking about, man? I think with the situation with, like, the Sam versus the Dream and, like, who to believe, is that people are trying to believe one or the other, when I'm like, dude, they're both unreliable here. Like, you can't
Yeah.
take anything at face
What we need to look at is the actual events and what actually happened when the prison
and
was
we don't
being
have-
built.
Yeah.
And what was said then and what was implied then. And I think the only way we'll really know the truth is if we see more. It's been implied that we'll see more of the prison construction in Dream's War video whenever that comes out. Could be this time next year for all we know at this point. But when it comes out, we will likely get more insight into the actual construction of the prison, and then we'll know who was being more truthful.
That's all I can hope for.
Or who was, or where they took the truth and where they twisted it to fit their worldview.
Yeah.
And it says like that entire conversation. There's a very clear power dynamic and power discrepancy between Sam and Dream, because Dream is like begging Sam not to tell Quackity that he's still there.
Scared of dying. That's the most interesting thing that I was like, oh, he's actually really scared of dying. Like, I always assumed his fear was something else, but man was like, I don't want to die. Which again will be interesting. Like, please, can we get some like, you know, more? I want to see like more of the like, you know, prison being built. I want to see this dude like, you know.
I wonder if he's died before, like permanently, because what he said to Techno
You don't
about
want
like it not being fun.
Death, do you?
I don't know if we'd be able to like get that from just observing Tommy.
Do you
Maybe
think he's used the revive
but
book
it
on
would be
himself?
interesting if he had died before, and that was why he's so paranoid about dying again. Maybe it's even why he wanted to get the revive book in the first place.
Do you think he tried it after Tommy left?
Anyway, that seems like a good time to end this episode.
What a way to end
We're
it.
just like, he's afraid of dying. Nah, it's all good. It's actually a pretty good end, so.
Alright, bye
yeah.
then.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thanks for listening to the 20th episode of Mellohi, and we hope you enjoyed it. If there's any topic you'd like to hear us discuss, feel free to leave a comment or find us on Twitter at Mellohi Podcast. We can also ask us questions or just get updates about new episodes. See you next time.